Hey guys, tonight we drift into marble silence, the great library of Alexandria. You're standing at the edge of history's most beautiful fire hazard, where the world's knowledge once glowed like embers in a cradle of marble, papyrus, and ambition. You probably won't survive this kind of wonder, honestly. It's too intoxicating. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing the map of sleepy travelers light up across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step barefoot across cool, veined marble. The air feels ancient, weighted with dust, sandalwood, and a faint tang of ink, the perfume of minds that refuse to forget. The ceiling arches like a sky built for whispering gods, and somewhere a torch flickers, its flame bowing low as though in reverence to the scrolls that line these endless shelves. You can almost hear them breathing, dry, crackling sighs of papyrus and vellum, waiting to tell you everything humanity once dared to dream. The librarian, tall, cloaked in linen the color of candle ash, doesn't speak. He only gestures. And you follow him through a corridor where the walls are carved with looping Greek, Egyptian, and Persian scripts. Your shadow merges with centuries. You are not just a visitor. You are a spark among sparks, wandering through an empire of memory. This is Alexandria, around the 3rd century BCE, a city of sunlight and secrets. Founded by Alexander, ruled by his successors, and nourished by the Nile's golden silt, a crossroads of cultures where Greek philosophers traded notes with Egyptian priests, where scrolls arrived on every ship and were borrowed, never returned, in the name of enlightenment. Historians still argue whether it was a library, a university, or something more like a temple to curiosity itself. Either way, you're inside it now. Try not to sneeze on the papyrus. Those things are priceless. The hush here is alive. You can almost hear Demetrius of Phalerum, one of the library's early architects, pacing between shelves, dictating to scribes. He believed every book in the world should live here. A bold idea, considering the world then stretched as far as anyone had walked or sailed. Ships docking in the Alexandrian harbor were inspected. If they carried books, the books were seized, copied, and kept. The copies are returned, the clerks would say with a straight face. But of course, they weren't. The originals stayed, nestled into these quiet catacombs of thought. You pause before a row of scrolls labeled in fading ink on the movement of the spheres, medicines of the desert, the laughing philosophy, titles like promises. A scroll slips slightly from its niche, as if inviting your fingers. The parchment sighs when you touch it, and your skin feels suddenly hot, as though knowledge has a pulse. You imagine scholars here by lamplight, Eratosthenes tracing the curve of the earth using shadows, Callimachus compiling the first catalog of world literature, and Hypatia, centuries later, teaching geometry with hands that smelled faintly of olive oil and sea air. You pass a side chamber where scribes grind ink. They mix soot and gum, testing the consistency on tiny scraps before committing to real scrolls. A young apprentice hums softly an ancient tune, maybe a love song, or maybe just the melody of routine. His fingertips are permanently blackened, his eyes red from long hours. Ink and eternity, he mutters, not noticing you. You smile. The romance of bureaucracy alive and well. The fringe rumor here, the one the scholars don't put in official records, is that some scrolls weren't meant for public reading. The chamber of erotic hymns, whispers one guard when you pass, texts of Eros and Isis, locked away by decree of the queen. Perhaps that's just a story, but the faint trace of myrrh in the air feels suspiciously like someone's been reading love poetry by candlelight. You trail your fingers along the wall where faint murals show figures reclining, reading aloud. In this time, reading wasn't silent. Every scroll was a song, every word spoken softly into the room. You catch fragments, the sigh of Greek vowels, the earthy hum of Coptic, the rhythm of Sanskrit. So many tongues mingling that even the walls must have learned to translate.
And here comes the first real shock. A fire crackles in the courtyard, but not that fire. Not the one that legend blames for the library's destruction. This one is controlled, ceremonial. Priests of Serapis burn the old scrolls that can no longer be read, sending their wisdom back to the gods in smoke. Better to return them as breath than as ash, they say. You watch the smoke coil toward the ceiling like a departing spirit, and for a moment, you feel that loss physically, as if a part of your own memory has been erased. Do you know, the librarian finally speaks, voice soft as dust, how a library dies? You shake your head. Not in fire, he says. Fire is only the last whisper. A library dies when no one listens. You keep walking. The heat of the torches clings to your skin. Somewhere outside, waves slap against the harbor stones, a lullaby of commerce and empire. Inside, time doesn't exist. It's always the hour before dawn, and you're always the last one awake. You wander into a chamber where a massive celestial globe spins slowly, lit by floating oil lamps. The model's brass gleams with constellations. Orion, Taurus, the Nile stars mapped as if the gods themselves had left blueprints. A scholar stands beside it, eyes bleary. Eratosthenes measured the Earth's circumference from shadows. He tells no one in particular. 2 cities, 1 sun, 1 stick, and a bit of math. His voice trembles, proud. You realize this was the birth of scientific geography, all because someone, once, was curious about the angle of the light. Still, even here, under the glow of genius, the human heart hums its smaller music. 2 scribes brush shoulders, linger, pretend it's an accident. A woman adjusts a lamp, her wrist grazing her companion's. The quiet intimacy of shared thought, that's what built this place. Every scroll, every experiment, every ink-stained finger born of connection. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra ever read here. Some say she inherited the library's remnants. Others think her daughter library at the Serapeum was all that remained. But in your dreamlike stroll, she appears briefly, veiled, curious, leaving behind a trail of perfume that smells faintly of parchment and honey. She glances your way and smiles, like someone who knows she'll be remembered even after her books are gone. You follow her out into the courtyard, where the night has turned liquid. The moonlight drips over limestone columns. Papyrus plants whisper near a shallow pool. The city beyond murmurs. Merchants, philosophers, lovers, all blending into a single hum. Alexandria is never truly silent. It is a mind that refuses to rest. You sit beside the reflecting pool. The librarian joins you again, handing you a cup of water cool as marble. Every thought ever thought lives here. You ask, even mine? He tilts his head. Especially yours. You're part of the archive now. The idea lingers, strange and comforting, that every fleeting curiosity, every question you'll forget tomorrow, might still echo in some eternal library. You breathe in, feel the salt of the sea mixed with the musk of papyrus. The torches flicker lower, and when dawn creeps through the lattice, painting everything in diluted gold, you realize that the marble silence isn't empty at all. It's full of dreams, of ashes, of you. You rise, lighter somehow, as though a few centuries of wonder have seeped into your bones. The librarian nods farewell, fading back into the corridors. You turn once more toward the shelves, still standing, still whispering, before stepping into the pale morning.
Somewhere, a scroll unfurls itself, the ink shifting slightly as if alive. A word glows faintly, one you can almost hear. It's a name, or maybe a promise. The story continues, waiting for the next wanderer brave enough to listen.
You step out of Alexandria's marble hush into a new kind of brilliance, Pergamon, where parchment breathes like skin and words are born not of papyrus reeds, but of animal hide stretched thin beneath the Anatolian sun. You're in what might be the most sensual rivalry in history, the kind fought not with armies, but with libraries. Alexandria had papyrus. Pergamon, they say, invented parchment just to spite them. Typical scholar drama. Ink stains instead of blood. The air smells of leather, lime, and rain-soaked clay. Bells chime faintly from distant temples. You find yourself climbing a steep acropolis where terraces bloom with olive trees and marble columns shimmer in the heat. The great library of Pergamon sits at the summit, carved into the mountain like a white crown. Every stone whispers competition. You can almost hear a librarian muttering, "We'll outscroll Alexandria yet." Inside, it's cooler. The sort of cool that hides secrets. The floors gleam with polished basalt. The walls shimmer faintly with gold dust. Parchment, unlike papyrus, holds the scent of touch. It flexes, it breathes. When you run a finger along a rolled codex, the surface gives slightly, as if remembering every hand that ever turned its pages. One ancient scholar called parchment the skin of thought. You find that phrase deliciously unsettling. Historians still argue whether Pergamon truly invented parchment or merely perfected it after Egypt banned papyrus exports. The story goes that King Numenes II, insulted by Alexandria's monopoly, told his artisans, "If the Nile won't share its reeds, we'll use the flesh of the earth." And so they did. Calves and sheep offered their hides for eternity. A gruesome start to something strangely sacred. You wander through a scriptorium that hungs like a beehive. Scribes sit cross-legged, scraping hides smooth, whispering to themselves. One coughs. Another hums a love song that sounds suspiciously modern, proof that heartbreak is timeless. The apprentice's fingertips are stained with white chalk and black gall ink, a visual reminder that art always demands a little damage. A portrait maker beckons you closer. "You can tell good skin by the sound," he says, holding up a nearly transparent sheet. He flicks it, and it sings, a thin, musical tone, like wind through hollow bone. "That's the voice of eternity," he says, grinning through missing teeth. "Or maybe just the echo of my sanity leaving." You both laugh softly, a shared joke across 2,000 years. But there's another layer here, something the official histories gloss over. Behind the neat columns and scholarly debates,
Pergamon hums with desire, not for conquest, but for creation. You catch glimpses. A young translator slipping a note beneath another's manuscript, their hands brushing in the exchange. A priestess copying an erotic hymn in code so the censors won't notice. A poet whispering metaphors that sound suspiciously like confessions. There's a fresco along one wall, faded, cracked, showing the goddess Athena leaning over a mortal's shoulder, guiding his hand as he writes. The mortal's face is half erased, as though the divine touch burned away his identity. The message seems clear. Knowledge and passion are inseparable twins. Outside, the library's terrace overlooks the valley of Caicus, shimmering in midday haze. The view is dizzying, the kind of beauty that makes you want to drop everything and become a monk or a poet or a problem. You lean against the marble railing and watch birds swoop over the red-tiled roofs. Below, markets buzz with color. Indigo cloth, figs glistening with honey, traders shouting in Greek, Phrygian, and something you can't name.
The librarian of Pergamon, a woman this time, approaches. Her robe is blue, trimmed with bronze thread. "We measure time by what survives," she says, handing you a scroll wrapped in faded ribbon. "But parchment cheats time." She unfurls it, revealing lines of poetry so small and precise they look like embroidery. The letters shimmer faintly, a trick of oil and light. Each word, she says, has to seduce its reader into remembrance. You ask her if she believes that's what writing really is, seduction. She tilts her head. "Isn't everything?" The parchment crackles softly between you. You realize that in this age, books aren't just vessels of thought, they're intimate bodies, tanned, scraped, inked, caressed. To read is to touch. To copy is to trace the ghost of another's hand. No wonder the ancients treated scrolls as living beings. In the corner, a group of philosophers debates whether the soul can be recorded, whether words themselves are fragments of immortality. One argues, if the gods speak through us, then every sentence is divine breath. Another laughs. Then I suppose the gods are terrible poets. They go on for hours. You resist the urge to join in, mostly because you know how academic debates end. Nobody wins, and everyone needs a drink. A quirky rumor circulates through the hall that Pergamon's parchment was so fine, people once made love letters out of it, rolled tight and hidden in jewelry. When unrolled, the warmth of the skin would reveal faint perfume, as if the words themselves blushed. You can't confirm that, but you kind of want it to be true. The sun slips lower, turning the parchment in your hands to gold. The librarian leads you deeper into the stacks, narrower now, candlelit, where even your breath sounds too loud. "These," she says, gesturing to the scrolls, "are copies of lost Alexandrian works. Our rivals burned, but their ghosts live here." She stops before one wrapped in red silk. Aristotle, or maybe a forgery. Historians still argue. She grins. "But tell me, would you read it any differently if it were fake?" You consider that. Truth and beauty, forgery and faith, all blurring like ink on wet parchment. Maybe every word, real or not, holds the same power if someone once believed in it. You move again, your fingertips grazing the spines of codices stacked like sleeping doves. The library seems endless, folding back on itself, corridors echoing faintly with soft laughter and the scratch of quills. Somewhere, a bell tolls for evening prayers. The light fades into amber. The librarian gestures toward a staircase that spirals upward. "Come," she says. "You haven't seen our altar to memory." At the top, you find a circular chamber lit entirely by glass lamps filled with scented oil.
The air is thick with jasmine, sandalwood, and the faintest trace of iron. In the center sits a single table upon which rests a codex bound in pale hide. No title, no markings. This, she says, is a book that rewrites itself. You blink. How? No one knows. Some say the ink shifts with the reader's breath. Others think it's just our imagination. Either way, it works. You sit, open it gently. The first words shimmer, then fade. New ones appear shaped by your own heartbeat. You are reading yourself into eternity. You close it quickly, heart pounding. The librarian smiles. Don't worry, everyone does that the first time. Outside, the night deepens. The stars hang close, so bright you could almost copy their patterns onto parchment. Below, Pergamon's amphitheater glows with torchlight, music drifting up, flutes, drums, laughter. You realize the city never truly sleeps. It dreams with its eyes open. You descend the steps slowly, feeling each cool stone underfoot. The wind smells of ink and salt and something unnameable, maybe creation itself. You glance back once more at the library, its windows shining like a constellation. In your pocket, a scrap of parchment hums softly. You don't remember taking it, but it's there. Blank, warm, alive. When you touch it, faint lines appear, curling into a sentence you can't quite read. Perhaps it's waiting for your next thought. After all, in Pergamon, even silence can be written. You leave Pergamon under a sky streaked with copper light, parchment crackling softly in your pocket, like a secret not yet ready to be told. The wind smells faintly of figs and smoke as you follow the ancient caravan trails east, through the silent sands, across the shifting mirrors of the Syrian desert, toward a place where knowledge shimmered like starlight reflected in oil. By the time you arrive, it's night, a deep, perfumed velvet that belongs only to Baghdad. The year is somewhere in the 9th century, during the Abbasid Golden Age, though time seems optional here. The Tigris murmurs nearby, dark and wide, carrying with it the voices of merchants, astronomers, poets, and cooks, all talking at once. You pass under a gate carved with Kufic script, Beit el-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. You're about to walk into humanity's most radiant dream of curiosity. The scent hits you first, rose oil, lamp smoke, and something sweetly metallic from the bronze astrolabes lining the walls. The lamps burn low and golden, throwing soft halos that tremble with every breeze. The air is heavy, alive. You can almost taste the electricity of thought. Everywhere, scholars murmur, not like monks chanting, more like conspirators gossiping about infinity. Arabic, Greek, Persian, Sanskrit, voices swirl in a language of shared awe. You catch fragments, the moon's reflection, the motion of the soul, how to turn copper into gold, or sadness into music. You realize these are the alchemists, the translators, the dreamers who made Baghdad shimmer brighter than any empire. Historians still argue whether the House of Wisdom was truly one place or many, a single grand library or a constellation of study rooms, observatories, and private salons scattered across the city. But as you walk through its courtyards, it feels like one immense mind, each lamp a neuron, each voice a flicker of electricity. A scholar in a deep indigo robe looks up from his scrolls and smiles. "Welcome," he says softly, "to the only place where you can argue with Aristotle, debate with Galen, and still have tea before dawn." His name, he tells you, is Hunayn ibn Ishaq,
one of the great translators of the age. He's been up all night turning Greek into Arabic, line by line, as a ferrying light across a river. You sit beside him, and he pours you tea scented with cardamom. Translation, he says, is an act of love. Every word must be persuaded to cross over, like a shy traveler. You sip, the warmth blooming through your chest. And what if it refuses? Then you whisper sweeter, he says, winking. That's the tone here, reverent but playful, intellectual but alive. The House of Wisdom is no sterile academy. It's a garden at midnight. In one corner, two women debate the stars, tracing constellations with fingers dipped in ink. In another, a group of poets recite verses from memory, while a lute sighs gently behind them. Even the mathematicians look half-enchanted, sketching sine waves and moon arcs like love letters to the universe. There's a rumor floating around that the Caliph al-Mamun once dreamed of Aristotle, the philosopher appearing to him in a vision, urging him to pursue wisdom above all things. Whether that's true or not, it fits. You can feel that same feverish curiosity humming through the tiles under your feet. Knowledge here isn't just collected, it's seduced, courted, sung into being. A narrow stairwell leads you upward to the observatory. You climb slowly, your fingers brushing cool stone, the air thinning as the hum of conversation fades below. At the top, the city spreads out in 1,000 flickering lights, a reflection of the night sky above it. Astronomers huddle around brass instruments, measuring the tilt of the heavens. We're correcting Ptolemy again, one mutters, adjusting a quadrant. He was off by a degree. You glance through a lens, primitive by modern standards, but miraculous in its time. The stars pulse like breathing things. You whisper something, a wish perhaps, and one of the scholars grins. Careful, he says, the heavens listen when the air is this clear.
Down below, the lamps are being refilled. Each one burns oil, scented with myrrh and orange peel, a small luxury that keeps the night sweet. A scribe nearby adjusts the wick of his lamp, and for a moment the light catches his face, young, tired, radiant. He's copying a Greek medical text by hand, pausing occasionally to stretch his fingers. "I'll finish by sunrise," he murmurs, "if my wrist survives." The fringe tale here, the one whispered between the shelves, is that some of these scholars dabbled in forbidden experiments, not dark magic exactly, but something close to metaphysical play. They tried to distill the essence of ideas into physical form, bottled inspiration, if you like. One jar, they claimed, could hold the scent of geometry. Another contained the residue of dream. Of course, no such relics remain, but somewhere in the city's archives, a note still describes the experiment. You suspect that's the real magic, the belief itself. You find yourself drawn toward a dimly lit courtyard. A fountain murmurs in the center, surrounded by fig trees. The water glows faintly with the reflection of lamps overhead. A woman sits nearby, writing on a parchment so fine it could be silk. Her name, she says, is Fatima Al-Fihiri, founder of one of the earliest universities in the world. She's visiting from Fez, exchanging manuscripts with Baghdad scholars. She glances up. "Do you know what I envy most about books?" she asks. You shake your head. "They never forget. They remember even when we are tired." You look down at her page, neat Arabic calligraphy winding like vines. She's copying a treatise on celestial music, how the movements of the planets create harmonies too subtle for the ear. The universe hums, she says, and we are its echo. Somewhere nearby, a poet recites lines to a small crowd. His voice drifts through the courtyard like smoke. Between ink and shadow, we are written and erased. Between star and silence, we are both question and answer. The applause is soft, reverent. You lean back against the warm marble and realize that this city, this moment, is what happens when humanity chooses curiosity over fear. Every lamp a rebellion against forgetting. Historians still argue what led to the decline of the House of Wisdom. Mongol invasion, religious intolerance, the slow decay of patronage. But right now, none of that exists. You're in the golden hour of intellect and intimacy, where knowledge feels like love made visible. A parchment mechanic offers you a sheet of parchment. Write something, he urges. You hesitate, then scribble, "Every breath is a page." He nods approvingly. A fine beginning. As the night deepens, the lamps burn lower, their flames smaller, steadier. You walk out onto a balcony that overlooks the Tigris. The water shimmers, carrying the city's light downstream like liquid gold. You think of Alexandria's marble silence, Pergamon's whispering parchments, all flowing together into this river of thought. In the distance, you can hear the faint call to prayer, rising and falling like a lullaby. The air cools, the stars shift. One scholar below yawns so wide his turban slips sideways. You stifle a laugh. Even geniuses need naps. You stay until the first pale blue of dawn edges the horizon. A final lamp flickers, sputters, dies. The city exhales. The House of Wisdom, for now, sleeps. You turn to leave, but something catches your eye. A faint shimmer on the parapet. There, scratched into the stone, barely visible in the dawn light, is a line of script in 3 languages: Greek, Arabic, and something unrecognizable. You lean closer. The translation is rough but clear enough. Light never dies, it only changes libraries. You smile. That sounds like something Aristotle might have said, or maybe you did. Either way, the truth hums softly in your chest as you descend the stairs, ready to follow the glow wherever it goes next. You wake to cold stone beneath your cheek, the smell of wax and smoke coiling around your senses. The world has changed again. The sun dimmed, the music gone quiet. When you open your eyes, you find yourself in a narrow cloister, lit by a few guttering candles. The air tastes of ink, old vellum, and penitence. Somewhere far above, a bell tolls, slow and resonant. Welcome to the Middle Ages, the age of faith and fatigue, of whispers hidden under hoods. You're inside a monastery scriptorium, where time itself seems to kneel. Rows of monks bend over wooden desks, their quills scratching faintly, a chorus of devotion and carpal tunnel. You can almost feel the rhythm. Dip, scratch, whisper, pray. A friar glances up, his face haloed by candlelight and fatigue. "Quiet feet, traveler," he murmurs. Words are sleeping.
You nod, moving carefully between the desks. The air hums with the soft susurrus of parchment turning, the faint creak of stools. Every sound is swallowed by stone. Here, beauty survives in secret. Each page is a prayer, each letter an act of rebellion against darkness. After all, when empires crumble and cities burn, someone still needs to copy the recipes, the hymns, the jokes. Monks, bless them, copied everything, the sacred, the scandalous, and the strangely unnecessary. It's thanks to these quiet obsessives that the words of Aristotle, Ovid, and even the occasional dirty Roman limerick reached us. You glance at one such page now, where the margin holds a doodle of a cat chasing a monk's robe. The artist, centuries gone, clearly had a sense of humor. Historians still argue whether these monastic scriptoria were acts of pure piety or settled defiance. Some say the monks simply obeyed orders. Others insist they knew exactly what they were preserving, knowledge the church wasn't always comfortable with. You can feel that tension here, sanctity and curiosity wrestling in candlelight. The abbot moves through the room, robes whispering. He stops beside a young scribe and murmurs something. The boy blushes, mutters a prayer, and adjusts his line spacing. You wonder what the correction was. A theological error, or maybe just bad handwriting. Either way, the page must be perfect before it joins the shelf. Every curve of ink, every golden flourish, made to survive the centuries. You reach the far wall, where finished manuscripts dry on racks. Illuminated initials gleam like tiny windows into paradise. Blues and reds so vivid you can almost taste them. Each one painted with crushed lapis and vermilion, precious as any gem. And yet, behind the beauty, there's exhaustion. You can feel it in the strokes, hands trembling, eyes straining in poor light. Imagine spending 10 years copying one book. No wonder a few of them snuck in jokes like, "As the harbor delights the sailor, so the pen delights the scribe." The scent of beeswax thickens as you step deeper into the scriptorium. A monk hums softly, perhaps to stay awake. You notice a small flask beside him, a mix of wine and honey, keeps the fingers warm, and the mind forgiving, he explains with a wink. You suspect it also keeps the margins more creative. On the table nearby lies an open bestiary, freshly painted, lions with human eyes, unicorns curled beside saints, dragons tangled with vines. It's equal parts scripture and fever dream. You lean close, tracing a line of Latin, hic draconis dormiunt. Here the dragons sleep. The phrase feels like a dare. There's a rumor here, a fringe story whispered by novices, that somewhere in the monastery's lower vaults lies a secret book, chained to the wall, written in a language no one can read. They say it hums faintly at night, like a heartbeat. Some claim it was copied by a monk who went blind afterward, others that it writes itself anew each generation. Probably nonsense, but then again, you've seen stranger things in your travels.
You follow a staircase downward, curiosity outweighing reverence. The stone grows colder, the air thicker with damp. You pass shelves of forgotten tomes, ledgers, sermons, herbals, the occasional cookbook. The flicker of your candle dances across faded Latin titles, De Miraculis Naturale, Medicamenta Anime, Liber di Silentio. The last one catches your attention. The Book of Silence. You almost reach for it, but something stops you. Perhaps the sense that not all silence wants to be disturbed. Back upstairs, dawn begins to stain the narrow windows gold.
The monks set down their quills, stretch, whisper their morning prayers. The bells toll again, softer now, almost tender. You realize the rhythm of this place, copy, pray, sleep, wake, repeat, is both prison and sanctuary. One monk, older than the rest, approaches you with a slow smile. His hands are ink black, his robe patched in a dozen places. "You've come far," he says. "From Alexandria, yes?" You blink. "How did you—" He chuckles. The smell of papyrus never fades. He leads you to a small alcove where a single manuscript lies open on a pedestal. "This one's special," he says. "A traveler's book. Came to us centuries ago. No author, no origin, just stories." You lean closer. The parchment is yellowed, but the ink's still sharp. The script, oddly familiar, curling, playful, like it remembers laughter. You read a line aloud. "Light never dies. It only changes libraries." The same phrase you saw in Baghdad. You exhale slowly, a shiver tracing your spine. "You've seen this before?" The monk nods. "We copy it every century. No one knows why. It feels necessary." Outside, rain begins to fall, soft, persistent, cleansing. It patters on the cloister roof, seeps between the stones. The monks move in procession toward the chapel, voices rising in chant. It's hauntingly beautiful, the sound of faith echoing through fatigue. You stand still, listening, feeling centuries blur. And in that moment, the solemn world of parchment and penitence turns tender. You see the monks not as relics of restraint, but as keepers of flame. Each quill stroke a heartbeat, each chant a pulse in the long body of memory. You realize they weren't just copying scripture, they were preserving the human voice itself, one syllable at a time. Later, at the refectory, the same monk who showed you the traveler's book sits beside you, spooning broth into his bowl. You ask him, half teasing, "Do you ever get bored?" He smirks. "Only when God repeats himself." You choke on a laugh, nearly spilling your soup. He grins wider. "Don't worry, he forgives humor. He must. He made us." You both eat in comfortable silence, the storm whispering outside. It's strange. The monastery should feel austere, repressive even. But there's warmth here, the kind that grows in places where people work quietly together for something larger than themselves. When night returns, you climb the tower steps and look out over the forested valley. Mist curls through the trees like unspooled silk. The world is asleep, but the library below still glows faintly. Its windows little squares of gold. Somewhere in the scriptorium, a single monk still writes by candlelight, the flame bending close as if listening. You know that tomorrow he'll copy your traveler's phrase again, unaware that you were ever here, that you once traced it in Baghdad or whispered it in Pergamon. But it doesn't matter. The line will endure, carried forward by hands that never met, by minds that never knew one another, all linked by ink and patience. As the bell tolls midnight, you whisper into the fog, "Light never dies." The wind seems to nod, carrying your words down into the sleeping library below. And somewhere, deep within the stone walls, the chained book hums softly, as if agreeing.
You awaken to warmth again,
This time, not candlelight, but the sun itself. Gold spills through tall, arched windows, catching on dust motes that dance like lazy sparks. You are no longer among monks or shadows. The air smells of pigment, sweat, and something citrusy, the scent of Florence, reborn and ambitious. The Renaissance has arrived, and you've stepped into its velvet shadow. The hush of scriptoria has given way to chatter, laughter, and the sharp scratch of quills on fine Italian paper. Outside, the Arno glitters beneath its bridges. Inside, you stand in a studio that smells faintly of turpentine and divine arrogance. You hear the gentle grind of marble being polished, the rustle of silks, and somewhere, faint lute music drifting through the open window. The Renaissance is a city of noise, intellectual, sensual, chaotic. Here, libraries are no longer merely places of preservation, they're salons of provocation. Historians still argue whether this cultural explosion was born of rediscovered Greek manuscripts or simply of people finally getting bored with the Middle Ages. Either way, it's dazzling. Everywhere you turn, there's someone sketching anatomy, reading Plato, or arguing about the proper angle of divine light. You wander through the Palazzo Medici, Florence's golden brain. Books are bound now, not rolled. The codex has triumphed. Leather spines gleam, and illuminated capitals curl like vines across pages that feel alive. You run your hand along a shelf, Dante, Ovid, Petrarch, and feel their ghosts smirking from between the lines. In one corner, a man with ink-stained fingers gestures wildly at a group of apprentices. He's quoting Aristotle, but somehow manages to make it sound flirtatious. That's Marsilio Ficino, philosopher, translator, professional idealist. He's explaining how the soul is drawn to beauty as the moth to flame. You suspect he's describing a crush and disguising it as metaphysics. Beauty, Ficino insists, is the reflection of divine order. To gaze upon it is to remember heaven. Someone in the back murmurs, or just to fall in love. He glares, but only half-heartedly. Same thing, he says. There's a woman nearby, Lucrezia, perhaps, or a composite of every clever Florentine hostess who ever lived. She reclines on a velvet chair, sipping something ruby-colored from a small cup. Careful, she says, her smile edged with mischief. Heaven's a dangerous place to remember. You find yourself grinning. The air in Florence hums differently. Knowledge has become flirtation, art has become argument, faith and flesh are suddenly, confusingly intertwined. You follow the sound of laughter into another room, a library, but unlike any you've seen. The walls are frescoed with figures in flowing robes, the muses painted larger than saints. The shelves are orderly chaos, Greek texts beside forbidden grimoires, medical treatises beside sonnets. A young artist sketches quietly in the corner, his charcoal smudging his fingers. He looks up and smiles. Michelangelo, he says simply, as if the name is just another vowel. You glance at his sketch, an arm, sinewed and perfect, half-draped in shadow. The intimacy of it catches you off guard. He notices and laughs softly. It's not the flesh that interests me. It's what the flesh hides. You're about to respond when another artist bursts in. Da Vinci, restless, brilliant, already halfway through another idea. The human body is a machine. No, an instrument. If we could only tune it properly, we'd have less poetry. Michelangelo interrupts dryly. Perhaps, but we'd have flight. You can't help but chuckle. The Renaissance is nothing if not a glorious argument. Even the dust here feels inspired. You stroll out onto the loggia where courtiers gather to gossip under marble arches. The Medici gardens stretch below, sculpted hedges surrounding fountains that whisper in Italian. A musician plucks a slow melody, his fingers deliberate, teasing.
You pause by a statue, Apollo, god of music and reason, carved so finely you can almost hear him breathe. Someone has draped a laurel wreath over his shoulder, and at his feet lies an open book. Its inscription, half hidden by shadow, reads, Veritas lux mea, truth is my light. You think back to your traveling phrase, the one that's followed you through centuries. Light again, always light, always moving libraries. A philosopher nearby, maybe Pico della Mirandola, that prodigy of impossible ideas, is holding court with a cluster of students. Man, he declares, is a creature of infinite possibility. We shape ourselves as the sculptor shapes stone. One of the listeners, a young woman in a red gown, tilts her head. And if the sculptor is unkind, she asks. Pico smiles gently. Then he learns compassion the hard way. You linger, watching her smile back, the kind of small, knowing smile that has started revolutions and symphonies alike. There's a rumor in Florence that the Medici keep a secret room beneath their library, a vault of forbidden manuscripts salvaged from heretical bonfires. Supposedly, inside are texts on astrology, erotic poetry, even alchemical recipes that claim to distill desire into a fragrance. You find the staircase easily enough. It's always the one you're not supposed to notice. The air below is cooler, rich with the scent of dust and oil. Lamps flicker, throwing soft shadows on the walls. The shelves down here are different. Darker wood, closer spacing. You run your fingers over the spines. Corpus Hermeticum, De Secretis, Carmina Prepea. A few titles you recognize, a few you'd better not admit aloud. A small bottle rests on a desk, labeled in Latin, Anima Flammae, flame of the soul. You unstopper it carefully. The scent that escapes is impossible to describe. Smoke, honey, and memory. You feel your pulse quicken. Whoever created it understood something fundamental, that curiosity itself can intoxicate. Historians still argue whether the Renaissance truly celebrated humanism or simply disguised its hunger behind art and intellect. But standing here, in this soft-lit room full of dangerous books and gentle heresies, you realize the truth is both. The desire to know and the desire to feel have always been one and the same. You find a desk with parchment and ink. Something compels you to write. Your hand moves almost on its own. Knowledge is not light. It is warmth. You pause, then add, and warmth burns if you hold it too close. Somewhere behind you, someone laughs softly. You turn. It's the woman in red from earlier, her candle illuminating the shelves. Careful, she says. The last man who wrote that here ended up canonized, or excommunicated, I forget which. Her eyes gleam with mischief. Would you like to see something beautiful? You nod. She leads you up a narrow staircase that opens into a small dome above the library. From here you can see all of Florence, spread out, tiled roofs glowing gold in the last light of day. The city looks alive, breathing. Below, the river catches fire with the sunset. The bells of Santa Maria del Fiore toll, deep and resonant. The sound vibrates through the stone beneath your feet. You feel that? She whispers. That's history remembering itself. The last rays fade, leaving only candlelight. You watch as she traces her finger along the curve of the dome's fresco, stars painted in gold leaf, glowing faintly. She says, Every age thinks it's rediscovering the light, but it never went anywhere.
It just waits for us to open the door. Her words echo as you descend. The library below has grown quiet, scholars gone to supper, lamps trimmed low. The scent of ink and citrus lingers in the air. You stop by the desk where you left your note. The ink is still wet, but beneath your words, something new has appeared, faint, golden, barely visible. Light never dies. It only changes hands. You smile, fold the parchment, and slip it into your pocket. Outside, the streets hum with the life of Florence, laughter, music, the splash of fountains. Somewhere, a poet begins to recite verses to the night. What we touch becomes eternal if we touch it with wonder. And for a brief, quiet moment, it feels true.
You drift again, not backward this time, not forward either, but somewhere between. The centuries blur like wet ink, and when you open your eyes, you're standing in the dust of what once was. The smell of smoke lingers, faint and melancholy. A city of silence stretches before you, columns toppled, marble cracked, and where they were once shelves of knowledge, only wind now speaks. You realize you've returned not to any one library, but to all of them, their ghosts folded together in this dreamlike expanse. The great library of Alexandria, the House of Wisdom, the monastic vaults, the Medici archives, all shimmer faintly here, existing in some liminal layer of memory. Pages flutter across the ground like pale moths. You stoop to pick one up. The ink has faded, but the texture of the parchment still holds warmth, as if the words haven't yet given up. You can almost hear them whispering, soft, insistent, alive. There's a strange comfort in this ruin, not the tragedy of loss, but the strange pulse of endurance. Every destroyed library has somehow become a seed, ideas scattered into the air, carried forward on breath and time. Historians still argue whether the Library of Alexandria truly burned all at once, or whether its destruction was slower, a series of small losses no one noticed until it was too late. But as you stand amid the ash and silence, it feels less like an ending and more like a long exhale. You wander deeper into the ruins. Somewhere ahead, water drips rhythmically, echoing like a heartbeat. Your footsteps stir dust that glows faintly in the dim light, motes of gold caught in slow suspension. In a cracked alcove, a few scrolls remain intact. You unroll one carefully, expecting philosophy or poetry, and find instead a list, a librarian's catalog perhaps, records of the ship's accounts, wheat exports, letters of the northern provinces. The humbling truth strikes you. For every poem we remember, 1,000 receipts were lost. For every philosopher, there was someone keeping the shelves clean. You smile faintly. Civilization is built on people we never thank. You keep walking. The ruins shift. Now you see shadows of other libraries flicker in and out. The fragrant cedar shelves of Nineveh's cuneiform tablets, the bamboo scrolls of Han China, the cool marble of Istanbul's archives, even the fragile paper towers of Kyoto's temples. It's as if history is shuffling through its memories, showing you its scrapbook of thought. You reach what feels like the center, a circular plaza filled with empty pedestals. Each once held something sacred to knowledge, a statue, a globe, a chest of texts. Now only traces remain. You run your hand over one, feeling shallow grooves where letters once were. Sapietia vincit tenebras. Wisdom conquers darkness. You can't help a small laugh. Most of the time, you whisper. From the far side, a faint, artificial hum begins, soft and steady. It feels oddly familiar, like the vibration of a modern life seeping in. A screen flickers in the air. A
A thin rectangle of light, hovering, showing a jumble of letters and code. You step closer. It's a digital archive. Somewhere in the now, the real now, someone is scanning ancient manuscripts, turning fragile pages into photons. The great library is being reborn, not in marble, but in servers and screens. The whisper of ink replaced by the soft click of keys. You watch as a text appears, letter from Hypatia of Alexandria to Synesius on philosophy and friendship. The letters shimmer, crisp and alive again. A strange ache moves through you, gratitude maybe, relief. We've always been afraid of losing things, but maybe nothing is truly lost, only translated into a new form. You move among rows of phantom shelves, now glowing faintly blue, as if made of light. You recognize pieces of everything you've seen, the recipes of Babylon, the verses of Baghdad, the arguments of Florence, all drifting through this new archive of the invisible. A quiet voice murmurs beside you. You're not sure if it's human or the echo of the place itself. Every era burns its books, but every era builds a new fire. You turn, but there's no one there, only the glow. It's comforting in a way, that stubborn persistence of curiosity, of human reach. You think of the woman in red beneath the Florentine dome, of the monks with their tired eyes, of Hypatia and her doomed scrolls. You wonder if any of them imagined that one day their words would be resurrected not on parchment, but as pulses of electricity flickering in the dark. You smile again. Maybe they would have approved. You kneel beside a glowing shelf and pull out a volume of light. It feels weightless, yet familiar. When you open it, the pages ripple like water. The words are your own, fragments of what you've seen, of what you've felt. Alexandria, Pergamon, Baghdad, Florence, all gathered here, woven into a single pulse. The air hums with a low, soothing tone, like a heartbeat slowed to a lullaby. You can almost believe the universe itself is whispering a bedtime story, one written across millennia. You exhale slowly, watching the pages fade to white, the words dissolve, the light dim. Somewhere far away, modern city lights blink like fireflies, each window a tiny, glowing archive of its own. Every phone, every cloud server, every digitized scrap of a dead language, all of it part of this endless, luminous library we now inhabit. You realize with a quiet sense of peace that the ancient library never truly ended, it just evolved. The whispers that once echoed off marble now travel through cables and airwaves. The same curiosity that lit oil lamps now charges batteries. And you, the dreamer, the wanderer, the listener, are part of that lineage. You are the last librarian of the night. You reach out, touch the fading light, and feel the warmth of 1,000 years settle into your palms. Then, as softly as the closing of a book, everything fades to quiet.
Now, breathe. Let the light from those imagined shelves dim, slowly, until you can almost hear your own heartbeat echo in the calm. The stories have quieted now. No more quills scratching, no scholars debating, no scrolls unrolling in the flicker of firelight. Just the hush of everything returning to stillness. You're still in the library, but it's no longer marble or parchment. It's the quiet space behind your eyelids. The shelves are made of memory, the lamps of imagination. The air is soft, weightless, safe. Let yourself drift through it one last time, past the ghost of Alexandria, the shimmer of Baghdad, the hum of Florence.
Let each dissolve into warmth. Every breath you take adds another gentle page to the invisible library of your own mind. Outside, night deepens, the real one. Maybe there's a fan humming in the corner, or the faint sound of traffic far away. All of it part of the same rhythm that's carried you through time tonight. There's nothing left to chase. Knowledge has folded back into quiet, like an ocean wave receding into itself. You are the calm after the journey, the silence after the final line. So, close your eyes. Let the dust settle. Let the centuries exhale around you. And as the last whispers fade into your breathing, remember, light never dies. It just waits, patiently, for someone like you to find it again. Sleep well, librarian of dreams.